Every weekday morning in Jakarta, packed trains rumble out of the stations, and many of them have Japanese names still written on the carriage walls. In fact, by 2018, Indonesia was operating over 900 second-hand Japanese train cars on its commuter lines. These aren't rusty cast-offs. They're robust electric coaches that once whisked Tokyo commuters through stations like Shinjuku and Shibuya. But in Japan, they were considered past their prime and headed for scrap. Now, they're the backbone of public transit an ocean away. It's a story of contrasts. One country's trash becoming another's daily treasure, powering millions of rides in cities that desperately need them. How did a fleet of aging Japanese commuter trains find new life across Southeast Asia? And why might this unusual era be coming to an end? What exactly are we talking about? In railway terms, rolling stock means the trains and carriages themselves, the moving parts of a railway. Around the world, commuter trains are typically built to last 30 to 50 years with proper maintenance. But in Japan, many commuter trains get replaced much sooner, often after around 20 to 30 years in service. Though exceptional models with aluminum bodies, like the Tokyo Metro 6000s, can survive nearly twice that long. Tokyo's famously efficient rail network runs thousands of cars daily, and they don't wait for them to fall apart. They upgrade to newer models regularly. That leaves a lot of perfectly functional older trains looking for a home. By the early 2000s, Japanese operators had begun selling or donating these used trains abroad instead of scrapping them. Southeast Asia's growing megacities, where buying brand new trains can strain budgets, saw an opportunity. Today, if you ride a train in Jakarta or Manila, there's a good chance it once ran in Japan's capital. This matters now because both the needs in Asia and Japan's approach are changing fast. We're at a turning point in this unusual exchange, making it the perfect time to explore how it all works. Japan's commuter rail operators have earned a global reputation for punctuality, safety, and innovation. But maintaining that reputation means being ruthless about aging equipment. Japanese law requires rigorous inspections and upgrades as trains get older, similar to the strict shaken vehicle inspections for cars. Each additional year of operation brings higher maintenance costs and regulatory hurdles for a train. At some point, it's actually cheaper for companies like JR East or Tokyo Metro to buy new trains than to keep refurbishing old ones. But there's more to it than costs. Japan constantly pushes for better technology, lighter materials, energy-efficient systems, and improved safety features. An old train from the 1980s might lack modern crash safety or use more electricity. In Tokyo's competitive railway environment, offering a quieter, air-conditioned, Wi-Fi-equipped new train can also be a selling point to riders. Therefore, rail companies schedule fleet renewals regularly, often retiring trains well before the end of their potential lifespan. Why not just keep them as backups or museum pieces? Space is limited in Japan's dense cities. Train depots and rail yards can't store lots of idle old trains. And scrapping trains in Japan is expensive. You have to safely remove electrical systems, recycle tons of steel, and follow environmental laws. In fact, Japanese companies found it more cost-effective to send used train cars overseas than to scrap them at home due to strict environmental regulations on disposal. In the 2000s, a pattern emerged. As soon as a railway like JR East would introduce a new model, they'd quietly look for foreign buyers or partners for the outgoing model. For example, the JR 205 series, a sturdy commuter train introduced in 1985, started being phased out in the 2010s, and dozens of those 205 series cars were shipped to Indonesia instead of heading to the scrapyard. This win-win mechanism saved Japanese companies demolition costs and even earned them a bit of money from the sales, while other countries gained ready-to-run trains at bargain prices. There's also a technical quirk that made this possible. Japan's railways share similarities with many former colonial railways in Asia. A key factor is track gauge, the distance between rails. Japan's traditional railways use Cape gauge, 1067 mm, a narrower track width that matches the networks in Indonesia and the Philippines, though notably it differs from the slightly narrower meter gauge, 1000 mm, standard found across mainland Southeast Asia. That meant Japanese trains could often literally fit the tracks in countries like Indonesia without changing their wheel sets or bogies. This compatibility was huge. It's one reason Indonesia became the top destination for Japan's used trains. By contrast, a country with standard gauge 1,435mm, like China or Europe, couldn't easily reuse these narrow gauge trains. Power systems were another consideration. Fortunately, Jakarta's commuter lines run 1,500 volts, direct current overhead electrification, the same as many Japanese commuter lines, so electric trains could be used with minimal modification. When all these stars aligned, regulatory pressure, economic logic, and technical compatibility, it created the perfect scenario for Japan to throw away trains straight into the arms of its neighbors. For years, this system looked like a miracle solution. Japan kept refreshing its fleets, and its Asian neighbors gained affordable trains to expand their transit systems. But nothing lasts forever. By the late 2010s, cracks in this arrangement began to show. The flow of Japanese hand-me-down trains was slowing, and recipient countries were growing more ambitious. Consider Indonesia. After importing over 1,000 second-hand Japanese cars between 2000 and 2017, officials started asking why their capital should rely on 30 or 40-year-old stock. Local train factories wanted a piece of the pie, and newer train makers from China and South Korea were offering brand-new trains at competitive prices. The narrative was about to flip. A turning point came in 2023, a year that would signal the beginning of the end for large-scale Japanese train imports. Governments and rail operators began to rethink the practice, foreshadowing big changes in where Asia's trains will come from next. After leaving Japan, many retired trains found a second life in Southeast Asia. Let's start with Indonesia, the biggest buyer. In Greater Jakarta, the commuter rail network, KRL, exploded in ridership during the 2000s and 2010s. Millions of people depend on it daily. To meet demand, Indonesia's railway operator Kai Commuter imported trains in bulk from Japan. By 2018, over 900 ex-Japan cars were running in Jakarta, ranging from former Tokyo Metro subway sets to JR East commuter trains. One famous example, the Tokyo Metro 6000 series, which served Tokyo's Chiyoda line for nearly 50 years, from the 1970s right up until 2018, now carries Jakarta commuters under the equatorial sun. These trains arrived with their original Japanese signage, advertisements, and route maps still stuck to the walls, a linguistic time capsule that passengers accepted as a quirky mark of quality. More importantly, they brought modern features like air conditioning to a system that previously ran sweltering older trains. Passengers welcomed the upgrade. As one report noted, the used Japanese trains came in good condition and featured air conditioning, a huge plus in Jakarta's heat. Even the variety of models, JR 205 series, Tokyo Metro 6000 series, 7000 series, older Tokyo trains, became part of Jakarta's rail culture. It was like inheriting a rolling museum of Japan's rail technology. There were technical adjustments to make it all work. For instance, Japanese train cars use a different coupling mechanism. Indonesian crews sometimes had to retrofit couplers or modify the formations, e.g. combining cars from different sets. Fortunately, because the track gauge and electrical systems matched, these trains could operate soon after arrival, often just repainted in KAI's red and yellow colors. Indonesian mechanics learned to maintain multiple train types, hunting down spare parts, or even salvaging components from older donations. It helped that Japan sent large quantities, not just a train or two, but dozens of sets. Between 2000 and 2017, more than 1,000 Japanese train cars were sold to Indonesia at prices often below 10 million yen each, under $100,000. By comparison, a brand new commuter train car can cost several times that amount. So this was an economical way to rapidly scale up transit capacity. The consequence? Jakarta today has a sprawling commuter network that punches above its weight for a developing city, largely thanks to hand-me-down Japanese engineering. It's become a point of pride for some and a quirk for others. Why is there still a JR logo on my train in Jakarta? Now, let's look at Myanmar, a very different case. Myanmar's rail system is old, underfunded, and mostly not electrified. Yet even here, Japan's retired trains made an impact. Starting around 2015, Japan began donating fleets of diesel multiple unit (DMU) trains, specifically Kiha 40 and Kiha 48 models from JR East and elsewhere. Eventually, over 100 of these cars would find their way to Myanmar to help upgrade lines like the Yangon Circular Railway. Yangon's suburban line was running creaky, worn-out coaches from the mid-20th century. The arrival of these 10 DMUs was a game-changer. Suddenly, there were relatively modern trains with better engines and interiors, provided essentially for free under Japanese aid. A ceremony was held at Yangon Central Station with officials from both countries to celebrate these second-hand arrivals. However, Myanmar faced a unique challenge. Its tracks are meter gauge, 1,000 millimeters, a tad narrower than Japan's 1,067 millimeters. That meant the donated trains couldn't run straight away. They needed retrofitting with new wheel sets or adjustable bogies to fit Myanmar's rails. Japanese engineers assisted with this conversion and with training Myanmar's rail crews. Once up and running, these retired DMUs vastly improved service on the Yangon Loop, which carries around 100,000 passengers a day. Riders who were used to ancient carriages suddenly had vehicles that, while not brand new, featured padded seats, fans or AC, and more reliable engines. Culturally, it was seen as a generous gesture from Japan, tying into a broader narrative of bilateral friendship. Technically, it gave Myanmar a quick boost in rolling stock without the long wait of purchasing new trains. The Philippines provides another fascinating chapter in this story. In the late 2000s and early 2010s, the Philippine National Railways, PNR, was trying to revive intercity and commuter rail services that had deteriorated after years of neglect. Japan stepped in with a donation of used trains and coaches. In 2011, PNR received 40 surplus train cars from JR East, part of a larger donation of rolling stock that included the sturdy 203 series commuter sets. These included former JR 203 series EMU cars that once served Tokyo's Joban line, along with some older express coaches and diesel rail cars. PNR's general manager at the time, Junio Regraggio, said the donated Japanese coaches looked relatively new and could run another 15 to 20 years, which was music to the ears of a cash-strapped railway. But there was a catch. Most of PNR's tracks weren't electrified, so how do you use electric multiple units on them? The solution was a bit unorthodox. PNR converted the 203 series EMU cars to be pulled by diesel locomotives. Essentially, they turned these Japanese electric train cars into unpowered coaches, coupling them to existing diesel engines and even outfitting generator cars to supply lighting and air conditioning. It wasn't pretty or efficient, but it worked. Before long, those Japanese carriages were running in Manila's daily commuter service, with some units eventually transferred to the provinces to serve the local regional lines in the Bicol region. For Filipino commuters, it meant more trains and more seats. To have formerly high-tech Japanese trains, with their sleek aluminum bodies and automatic doors, was a big upgrade, even if they were from the 1980s. It proved the adage, one man's trash is another man's treasure, quite literally. The Philippines got rolling stock for pennies on the dollar. The trains were a donation. PNR mainly paid for shipping and rehab, allowing expansion of service without waiting for new orders. Across these examples, the pattern was clear. Japan's rigorous standards and upgrade cycles cast off trains that still had plenty of life left. Indonesia, Myanmar, and the Philippines, and more recently Thailand, which accepted retired limited express diesel trains, benefited by filling urgent transport needs quickly. Entire generations of commuters in these countries have now grown up riding second-hand Japanese trains. The cultural consequences are sometimes heartwarming. Indonesian railfan groups organizing farewell events for retiring trains, complete with anime-style headmarks that hark back to their Japanese origin, or Filipino railfans carefully preserving the JR decals on a coach as a piece of history. Technically, this influx of diverse rolling stock also taught local engineers how to maintain and operate a wide array of train technologies, building up human expertise. However, reliance on used imports had downsides too. Maintenance could be tricky with no local spare parts supply, and mixing train types meant a less standardized fleet. These factors, combined with national pride and changing economics, set the stage for what would happen next. By the 2020s, a new reality was emerging. Many Asian countries that once welcomed Japan's used trains are now expanding and modernizing their rail networks in different ways. One big shift: homegrown and brand new trains are on the rise. Take Indonesia again, the very poster child of Japanese train imports. In early 2023, Indonesia's government put its foot down and halted the import of more used Japanese trains. PT Kai Commuter had planned to bring in hundreds of older Japanese cars, some as old as 20 to 30 years, to replace retiring units and boost capacity. But ministries like the Ministry of Industry and the Coordinating Ministry for Maritime Affairs said, no, it's time to prioritize domestic and new trains. One reason was a patriotic push. Indonesian train builder PT Inka now produces decent commuter trains domestically, and officials want to support local manufacturing even if it's pricier. Another reason was regulatory. A trade ministry rule actually banned importing equipment over 20 years old, a rule that had existed but was now being enforced strictly. After some debate, and a temporary fear of train shortages in Jakarta, a solution was struck. Indonesia would buy new trains instead, placing major orders with the domestic manufacturer PT Inka and importing a smaller batch from China's CRRC Sifang, and even retrofit some older units to extend their life rather than importing more old ones. By mid-2023, officials announced a massive commitment to buy newly built train sets from the local manufacturer PT Inka. To bridge the immediate gap, this was followed in early 2024 by a smaller import order for new trains from China's CRRC Qingdao Sifang. It was a symbolic moment. After decades of "Japan's trash is our treasure," Indonesia signaled that it no longer wants to be seen as the dumping ground for obsolete stock. The numbers behind this shift are striking. Kai Commuter calculated that importing a stopgap batch of used Japanese trains would cost roughly 150 billion rupiah, $10 million. On the other hand, purchasing a full fleet of 16 brand new train sets from local manufacturer PT Inka would cost nearly 4 trillion rupiah, $270 million. That's a staggering 27-fold difference in total project cost, driven by the much larger size of the new fleet order. But the government is accepting the premium to secure modern assets. For riders, new trains mean improved comfort and technology, better acceleration, digital passenger info, maybe even phone charging outlets. For Japan, it means fewer outlets to offload old stock, perhaps a nudge to produce less or scrap more at home. And for China and Korea, it's an opening. These countries are aggressively marketing affordable new trains and even financing deals as part of their global infrastructure push. In the Philippines, for example, many new rail projects are coming with brand new rolling stock. Manila's upcoming subway is getting Japanese-built trains via official development aid. The rehabilitated commuter line, North-South Commuter Railway, is purchasing brand new train sets from Japan's J-Trek, and Mindanao's planned railway, having recently dropped Chinese funding, is now looking to other partners, potentially sourcing rolling stock from Indonesia or via new public-private partnerships. The Philippines Department of Transportation has also been less keen on second-hand imports lately, focusing on securing funding for new equipment. One telling incident. In 2021, Vietnam flatly rejected a proposal to import 37 used Japanese train cars that were offered for free. Why? Because they were 40 years old and didn't meet Vietnam's railway age limits. Vietnam's Deputy Prime Minister noted that these cars, while cheap, VRC estimated refurbishing them for only $6 million total versus nearly $48 million for new ones, could pose safety and environmental risks. In other words, even a developing country said, thanks, but no thanks. A stark change from a decade ago. So, what's next for the afterlife of commuter trains? It appears we're witnessing the end of an era. As major buyers like Indonesia enforce strict import bans in favor of new fleets, the pipeline is shifting rather than drying up completely, illustrated by Thailand's recent decision to accept retired Kiha 183 diesel trains from Hokkaido to boost its own tourism and provincial services. Japan's operators may have to scrap more old stock or find more creative reuse, perhaps domestic tourist lines or selling to museums and heritage railways. On the flip side, Asian cities will get newer trains, whether home-built, imported from China/Korea, or even brand new Japanese ones bought with aid money, leading to more uniform, modern fleets. The days of a Tokyo train finding a second life in Manila or Yangon are numbered. Yet, the legacy of this unusual chapter lives on. Those 1980s and 1990s Japanese trains are still out there riding the rails of Jakarta, Yangon, and Manila today, gradually being retired for a second time. They proved that appropriate technology can leap borders. A well-built train can serve populations in need rather than rusting away. And they connected people in an unexpected way. When a former JR East train in Jabodetabek, Greater Jakarta, finally took its last journey in 2022, local fans held a farewell for it, celebrating the train's 30-plus years of service between two very different worlds. That kind of story shows how infrastructure and culture intertwined thanks to this practice. Now, as we enter a future with fancy new metros and high-speed rails across Asia, it's worth pausing to appreciate the humble hand-me-down commuter train. An unsung hero of urban mobility that taught us one man's trash really can be Asia's treasure.